So I started experimenting with the concept of truth in feelings. Does that make sense to you, Andy?
Yeah.
Truth in feelings. So not truth in words, not truth in thoughts, but truth in feelings. Like, what are my real feelings versus what are the feelings I want to have versus what they actually are.
You mean like allow the feeling to exist and not run away from it? Like
not run away, not judge it, not condemn it, not punish yourself for it, not, there's so many things we do with our feelings. And I had to learn how to have them without doing any of those things. Because as soon as you do those things, you don't have them anymore. I had to learn how to not share them, because in this life in particular, I was always wanting someone else to share in my feelings with me. Like, let's pray together, that kind of idea, because I don't feel comfortable doing it by myself. I want you to do it with me, that kind of thing.
Or if I just talk about it, I'll get more connected to it.
Yeah, I tried that too. But, a lot of things I tried to work around. In this life in particular, I tried to work around the feelings. In the first century, I didn't do that as much because I allowed myself to have them. So when I was experimenting, let's say nobody's ever tried this. I thought, no, everybody I talked to people about it first. I thought, my mum and dad, I talked to about it. My dad thought I was nuts. Joseph, that was. My mum thought, oh, that's an interesting idea, but just didn't think about it anymore. I talked to other people, my friends, about it, but they were too interested in playing cowboys and Indians, what you'd call it now, which was more like Jews and Romans back then. But, they're too busy playing that to, all my male friends, to worry about things of any depth. So I couldn't talk to them about it. So in the end, I just had to create some experiments of my own. So now we've got a concept, we can create an experiment. Right? So I had to experiment with my feelings here. So I was experimenting with my feelings. How do they flow? How do they work? What do I feel in my body? Some feelings are associated with different parts of your body, of course, the way your body works. And so where do I feel fear? Where do I feel anger? Where do I feel, I had to experiment with all that just to work out my own feelings. Where do I feel agreement? Where does that feel? Where do I feel love? Where does that feel? I had to try to join these feelings with my body. And at this stage I didn't know I had a spirit body. I suspected there was, life after death.
Can I say, I'm also in that experiment now personally, but
yep.
Not connected to God, but
correct.
Exploring the
I get it.
emotions and where they are, and not running away from them, not trying to run away from them.
Yep. Still very intellectual though, and still high demands of other people's agreement. So that's shutting you down a lot. Do you understand what I mean by that?
Just say that again, please.
You're still very intellectual with the way you treat your emotions rather than just experiencing them properly without restriction. And you're also in a high demand for agreement from others in order to experience the emotion. So this is actually causing you to detune from your own emotion. It's a projection coming out of you towards others, which stops you from actually living your own emotion.
Yeah, there's a conversation about them.
And there's a conversation with yourself about them.
That's what I mean. Yeah.
With your intellect.
It's like you're trying to, with your intellect, observe your emotion.
And then acknowledge that, but you still have to get the permission from your intellect for them to exist.
Can I sort of go a little deeper with that? It's almost like there's a potential to fully blend with the emotion and in a way become that emotion.
There is.
Or, and which is the sort of direction I'm going, is that I partially blend with it, so I feel it, but it doesn't take over me.
Yeah, that's not gonna. You're not gonna do it that way. It's got to take over you completely.
For it to change, it has to overwhelm you.
Yeah, most men don't want to do this.
Lots of women too.
Yeah. For different emotions, different emotions.
Can I explain why I do that?
No. It doesn't work. I understand why you do it. It's fear-driven, actually.
Yeah.
Can you see how?
It's actually trying to see them for what they are.
No. You can't see an emotion for what it is without experiencing it fully.
Letting it over.
and really letting it overwhelm you. It's a misconception that people have on earth that you can sort of observe emotion. Yeah, it's not the way God designed you. It's not going to work. But
Sorry, can I just say, like, if I so I have shame in me, like
Yep.
many others, and if I totally feel that feeling of shame,
Yep.
then I am fucked. Let's say.
no, you're not.
Okay.
No, you believe you are. Yeah, you believe it's going to be the end of your world, your end of your life. You even believe you're going to suicide if you go that far. You know, and you don't have to. You know, you can go into your feelings fully without going down that, without suiciding. In fact, when a person suicides, it's because they want to avoid doing that with their feelings. So even that is evidence. Even the desire to suicide is evidence that you don't want to go into your feelings properly. You understand? So very important to understand that actually you can't observe your emotions, and many men believe they can, by the way. Like, it's a very common perception by men in particular. I think women don't sort of reason with themselves as much, but they're terrified of their feelings still. So with a woman, they go, I don't want to go there, I'm just freaked out. You know?
I know if I
But
half
the man's
go there,
going,
there's
"I'm
no
not."
coming back.
The man's
Yeah.
going there, I'm not freaked out, I've got control of this. Yeah, that kind of thing. And so, you know, frequently we see that happening, and both things are actually not going to help you feel your feelings, obviously. But it's important to understand that the way God wants you to feel feelings is by actually raw having them. Right, like powerfully raw, way beyond your current ability to let yourself have it at this stage. At the moment, there's a lot of heavy intellectual control over the emotion. Does that make sense?
I see that now, actually.
Yeah.
It's like it's coming for a reason, so don't stem it, don't resist it, really allow it.
Yeah, but even your saying that to yourself is disallowing it. And this is what
It's
most
the
people don't
gatekeeping.
realise. It's the gatekeeping that stops people from truly feeling their feelings. Now, God's feelings are going to be overwhelming. So if you can't let yourself be overwhelmed by an emotion of your own, how are you ever going to let yourself be overwhelmed by one of God's emotions? Can you see that? Yep. So, very important to learn how to feel an emotion. This is a part of the experiment. Can you see, if I can't let myself have an overwhelming emotional experience, even of my own, can you see I'm not going to let God have an emotional overwhelming experience with me, because it's going to feel even more scary than me just having my own, right? It's coming from someone else, not me, you know. So naturally I'm going to try to restrict it. I'm going to try to control it. I'm going to try to keep it under wraps. And the way men in particular do this is by doing what you're doing, by thinking they can observe and notice and sort of allow the noticing of, right, without actually going to the depth of the feeling. And it's not going to work. Right? So the question is, how are we going to go to the depth of the feeling? Well, that's a lot about your fears. You're going to have to learn how to feel what your fears are, right? And that took me quite a long time, actually, to do that in this life. I had a lot of fears, as I've explained, and it took me quite some time to get to the stage where I'd let myself go there. Now, from the time I started my fear to the time I got to this place where I could actually feel an emotion was a period of nearly 4 years for me. It took me that long of focusing on my fears, working through my fears. What are they? And men, I find, are generally more dishonest about their fears than women, because women acknowledge they have fears, and the big thing women say is, a man should save me from them. You know,
And it's justified.
And it's justified.
Yeah.
My fears
My
are all
fears
justified. That's how a
justified.
woman feels. So I know what they are, but I'm not going there because it's justified me never going there. That's sort of how a woman treats their fears. How a man treats his fears is, I don't have any. Or they're not that bad. Oh, they're not that strong. I've got control of them. Oh, I'm going to confront them, you know, like this is why men do reckless things. because men are afraid of a lot of things, and then they go into like extreme sports to prove they can overcome their fear emotionally, physically overcome an emotional thing, which of course they never can do, and most of them die trying it, right? Many men in extreme sports either get out extremely injured or dead because of this. And so most men sort of tell themselves, I've got some level of power, control, I can observe them, I can sort of watch them pass me by, that kind of idea. And this is where a lot of New Age concepts have come from, actually, men's desire to do this. So you can't do that. You're going to have to allow the full expression. Now, it's a learning process, is the answer to that question. It took me ages to learn how to do that. I had to get rid of, in this life, I had to get rid of a lot of fears in order to do it. So one of my fears was, what would everybody think of me doing, like crying a lot? What would everybody think of me? Everyone would think I'm weak and stupid, and I had to deal with how everybody thought of me. And in fact, at the beginning, what I had to do was, for a period of time, I spent nearly 6 months alone, aside from going down the shop to get food. I spent nearly 6 months alone just learning how to cry without feeling like I was judging myself for it. Like, just took me that long to sort that out. And also the fear, like people were judging me for it all the time. I was in this fear state, and I was shaking like this, and people go, "What's wrong with you? Have you got Parkinson's or something? Have you gone to the doctor?" My mum was saying to me all the time, "Go to the doctor, go to the doctor, go to the doctor." Like just the amount of judgment that comes at you just for feeling afraid. Took a long time for me to just get used to it. No, I'm allowed to feel afraid. I can feel afraid. I can handle it. I can be even terrified. I went through some of my memories from the 1st century during that stage of being tortured, and it was terrible. But I learned how to feel the feelings. These are the kinds of things you need to do. And once you learn how to feel feelings, now I started to open up a bit to God in terms of the concept of God again as a result. And then when I started longing, there's the answers, often with a lot of tears, based on the contrast. But I was prepared to feel tears now. I was prepared to cry. I was prepared to go through fear. I was prepared to feel shame and other emotions.
So to make contact, to receive.
Yeah, there's going to be all sorts of emotions you feel as you receive God's love. Many of them will be quite confronting, because how God feels about you is going to be a deep contrast to how you feel about you and how other people feel about you. And most of us are only used to how other people feel about us. We're barely used to our own feelings about ourselves. And they all get confronted as a part of the process. When God loves you and you feel some of that love, and you don't love yourself very much, there's going to be a huge contrast between those points, and you're going to have a lot of grief come out as a result, you see. And most men in particular, again, like when it comes to crying, we're not good at it. Men are being taught not to be good at it. Like we've been taught to hold it in, keep it under control. Women are generally a little bit better at it, but they get so afraid about the depth of it, the intensity, and so they go, now I'm too afraid. Now most women just get angry. I'm too afraid now, I can't go there. That kind of thing. With men, they don't even get to the stage of being angry about it. They already believe they've got it all under control generally. So these are things that are a part of your learning that needs to occur in order for you to entertain an experiment where you're going to enter an emotional experiment with God. Do you see? You're not going to enter an emotional experiment with God if you've got total control over your own emotions all the time. You're just not going to do it. You're not going to want to. If you're into pleasing people, pleasing other people, if you're into your own comforts, being comfortable all the time emotionally, you're not going to do it. You're going to have to deal with some of that first before you do it. Right? Now, the problem with all that is that you're dealing with all these things, but there's no result yet. With God, I mean, there's no result yet. That's when most people give up. Because there's no positive result, and yet I'm having to do all of these hard things. But can you see, it's a measure of your longing and your sincerity as to whether you're prepared to do those hard things. Can you see that? Yeah. So, very important to understand that if you do have a longing and if you do have a sincerity, you will do what is necessary. The way I look at it is, well, it is what it is. I was shut down. I need to open up. I'm going to have to go through some pain to get it all back open. You know, I was shutting myself down intellectually. I'm going to have to get rid of some of this intellectual control I've got. I'm going to have to get rid of enough of it to be able to abandon myself to one emotion at least. You know, at least to grief. I needed to learn how to abandon myself to it. Right? Took me a while. But once I did, then you could start having the first experiences with God. And then you realise how worth it is after that.
Yeah. Because we know you were looking for inspiration, Andy.
Mm.
It's going to be good. It's going to be really good.
You'll learn a lot about yourself in the process.
So much.
As well.
And even though Jesus said that you be overwhelmed with the grief of, you know, your own conception of yourself will be challenged, and a new awareness of, wow, there's a lot of lack of love around me.
And a lot of lack of love in your childhood, and a lot of lack of love in your day-to-day life. And you even realise that even a lot of your relationships, they're just like, they're not really relationships. They're just sort of like, we like footy, or we like this, or we like that, and you do that, but it's hardly
You don't even know each other.
You don't even really know each other or how each other feels, and you start realising, wow, a lot of your relationships are not really relationships either, and like, do they even like you? You don't even know whether somebody likes you or not a lot of times. And there's a lot to grieve in all that. You know, there's a lot of grief.
But the thing that comes with that grief is this new thing, this new strength actually, this new knowledge, this new awareness, this new love that it will become a benchmark for the rest of your life.
Mm.
You know, you will understand love in a whole new way, and you'll understand that you are loved in a whole new way.
Yeah. Not only that, you will be so strong in the way you handle your emotions, in the way you experience them, that you will never want to go back. Because it's like going back to a numb life. That's how it would feel for me now. It's sort of like, if I had to try to shut myself down now, it would be like trying to shut down this person who's popped out. It's like a jack in a box. Popped out. And now I'd be trying to squeeze myself back into that. It'd be impossible for me now. It's just, I can't go there. Can't go to an emotionally numb place anymore.
Because you're more connected to every sense now as well, aren't you?
Yep.
Physically,
Physical,
emotionally,
touch,
just
taste,
more aware,
smells,
more alive, more awake.
everything.
And we don't realise how asleep and numb we are when we're in this very shut down process and coming out of it. And receiving God's love is just like sensitizes.
One of the very first things I felt was colour. I didn't know you could feel colour. Like, I always just thought colour, whatever. You know, like, yes, I was an artist. Like, I love drawing. And I use colour for that, but it's colour, you know. But I didn't know that every colour had a feeling. And when you see certain things, there's feelings that are from that colour that come up, you know.
And you used to wear just like grey and brown and blue.
Grey and brown.
And now you never see Jesus without vibrant colour.
Yeah. Used to wear just
suits and
black, you know, like the average cool dude would. Not that I was that cool. You know, used to just wear the same thing that everyone else wore. The only thing I would experiment with colour was my tie. That was it. Yeah. That could be bright red or something, or different colours, but the rest of it was all just black, grey. And it was the same with my life, really. A lot of my life was just grey. Not bad, not good, just grey. And I didn't really feel much of it. When I started feeling, I went through a lot of fear about feeling, and fear about, and mostly the first emotions I felt were fear, like terror sometimes, like just terrified of just even feeling. I was so terrified that I used to sleep, like I've said before, with a knife by my bed, thinking that one day I might have to kill myself with it, just to stop myself from feeling. That's how I felt. I was pretty, there were times when I just wanted to get in a car and drive into a brick wall, until I learned how to deal with the feelings properly. I wouldn't let myself do that. I just felt it. I just let myself feel that I wanted to do that. And
Quite a turnaround.
yeah, like I said, I was numb, and I was pretty afraid about feelings. In this life, in the first century, I was not at all, and it was such a big contrast. But in this life, I understand what it's like to be a guy in particular, having to try to start feeling feelings when you're not a child anymore, you're an adult, and you've been shut down for so many years. Very, very difficult to feel feelings.
Both of our lives, in our
Mary's the
early
same.
life.
Yeah.
I was raised in a very stoic household who, there's feelings.
All Mary's feelings were for her parents.
I needed to feel for everybody else, never for
Never for
myself.
herself.
So we both come from extremely shut down places.
Yeah.
When I met you, I can't remember when I cried the last time. I couldn't remember the last time I cried. And, I'm a woman, but I was very, very, very shut down.
In my entire adult life, I only cried once until I started this process. It was when somebody I cared about died. That was it. I didn't have any other connections or any other feelings other than that.
But we don't know what it's like to be pretty shut down, pretty scared of feeling.
Yeah. The key is to go through experiments with each one of those things until you're open enough emotionally to be able to handle your own emotions. So firstly, the first thing I had to do is learn how to experiment with myself. And once I experimented with myself enough to understand my emotion and that I could handle it, I could handle feelings. And then I started flirting with the idea or concept of having some relationship with other people, God including, and other people as well. I was alone from the time I was 33 to the time I was nearly 40, because it took me that long to work out how to sort of feel, about things. So I spent most of that time alone. Till I met Mary. I met Mary when I was 45. And from the time I was 33 to 45, I pretty much had one relationship, one very brief relationship, and then I had 5 or 6 years no relationship. It took me that long just to learn how to feel and to be comfortable in my own skin with feelings. Yeah.
It's a beautiful response, Gary. I really appreciate it.
Yeah.
Wish you well, Andy, with it.
Yeah. I think it's a very good question, Andy, because there's a lot of men in particular in this state, firstly, where there's not a lot of conviction that God is a designer, with laws and science, that God's the master science man, or woman, that God's the master creator of everything, so therefore knows everything. So there's firstly that concept that you've got to get used to. But secondly, the concept that God doesn't do, if God gave you some voice in your head, right, as an answer to your questions, then you'd rely on the voice in your head rather than feelings in order to determine God's feelings, in order to determine the accuracy of something, right? And you wouldn't learn how to have your own feelings. You wouldn't. The average man would not go there, right? And many women would go there, but only if it wasn't fear, But the average man wouldn't go there at all. He wouldn't even contemplate the idea of feelings being the way you communicate. And so if God had given you answers that are direct like that, can you see it would modify the way you then treat God, which would then limit your ability to grow in this other way, right? So God, you can see why God has done it the way God's done, because in the end, you can see that if he had have responded any other way, we would rely on that. And then if that way was a subset of what God could do, we'd be relying on the subset rather than the reality. Right? So that wouldn't be good for us. So, that's what I've come to appreciate in this life a lot. That God's got these sort of really laws, you call them laws, right? And the reason why I call them laws is they are laws. You know, cut and dried, yes or no laws. And God's got them. The reason why God's got them is because it creates a sense of stability in the universe, but also in his communication with us. And so unless we adhere to those laws and find out what they are through experiment, and like I said, the first thing you have to experiment with is your own feelings, and then you can start creating experiments. You come up with ideas and concepts and create experiments with God's feelings. And once you do that, you'll get the result. Anybody who does an experiment with God, once they start feeling, gets a result. Anybody who tries the experiment with God without feeling never gets a result. Ever. Interestingly, they do get other things. So they get sort of like people coming along saying, talking about feelings. You get a lot of other things. Help, but not with God, because God's communication with you is going to be direct through the feelings. So, that's a necessary part of growth. So for a lot of men, that's the challenge. And a lot of people, that's the challenge. Obviously, like I said, many women have this terror associated with feeling certain types of feelings. So many women are okay with crying. They've been taught they're allowed to be, to some extent. Not everyone. Not too far. You don't go too far. You're out of control now, that kind of thing. But you're allowed to cry because you're a woman and you got hormones. Like, that's the attitude generally, which is not God's attitude, by the way. But that's the attitude that comes from people. But when it comes to terror or fear, women go, no, I'm not going there. Right? That's the man's domain.
Got to fix that.
He's got to fix that, and there's a whole lot of comfort around terror that women don't want to address, and so they often have to learn how to experience fear as well. Many men are capable of experiencing fear. It's interesting, but not fear of emotion, grief and shame and other things. They're capable of experiencing fear because they'll go up like many of them will even climb a cliff without any ropes. And that would freak me out a bit. I'll be going, yeah, that's a bit silly. I think I want a rope. I'm happy to climb a cliff with a rope. We have these nice rope courses in Australia now, which are up 3 or 4 stories and you've got a rope and away you go, and it's great fun. So I'm happy to do all that. I'm not afraid of heights or anything, but I'm not going to climb a cliff without some way of a backup just in case I make a mistake, because I'm aware that I'm prone to mistakes. So that would be a bit silly. One mistake and I'm dead. I don't want that. So I've got other things I want to do on Earth, right, while I'm here, other than just climb a cliff. So of course I don't, do that, because it's just silliness, right? But most men are even okay with even doing that because they want to challenge their fears. And a lot of men are okay challenging fears, not feeling them so much as challenging them or gaining control over them. But most women are not even prepared to do that. Like, most women are going, fear? No. Comfort? Yes. And comfort is what I want. So each gender has its own particular injuries regarding what we allow our experience to be. And those particular injuries will play a part in whether we're able to receive love from God or not. Good question. What's the time, guys?
Oh, it's 7 minutes.
7 minutes to go. There's one more question.
More about how do we